quickly, I also want to understand, taking on from what you were saying, that as of now, the display of warships that we're seeing by China, is it just restricted to the mind games and optics, flexing of muscles, or is there a real military action that's possible as well?
We have not seen any evidence of that. There's one other news agency that was reporting, some planes and perhaps ships came close to this median line, this dividing line in the Taiwan Strait. We haven't confirmed that. They were citing sources, anonymous sources, and we have, the defense ministry is just not answering any questions today. So it could be true, could not be, but Chinese planes crossing over the median line or ships is nothing new, because China never agreed to that median line, and they don't respect it. They think that of course, they think that Taiwan is part of mainland China. They have a page in their passports, listing Taiwan, an island that has had its own government and military for more than 70 years, as a province of China in Chinese passports. The communist rulers never actually have governed this island or controlled it, and yet they believe that it is theirs and that it will be theirs in a more formal, capacity, one way or another, eventually. However, we don't see any evidence that's going to kick off starting today with Nancy Pelosi's visit. But down the road, every analyst I've talked to does believe that at some point China will make a move on Taiwan. If, when, how, those are the things that the questions we're constantly asking, and so are, frankly, military intelligence in the United States and Taiwan and Japan and all the other stakeholders in this region, who would potentially be involved and drawn into some sort of a conflict across the Taiwan Strait.
Well, absolutely. Those really are the big questions that still remain. Will, we appreciate you taking our time and joining us here. Now, we quickly want to go back to what we were discussing earlier, which is the position and the voices that we've heard from the United States so far. As I was pointing out earlier, that even as China's warning of dire consequences, voices within the United States are divided today. While on one hand, you have the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who's defended this expected visit by quoting past precedent, you have U.S. President Joe Biden, who was heard telling reporters that the military feels it isn't a wise decision.
This is very much precedent in the sense that previous speakers visited Taiwan. Many members of Congress go to Taiwan, including this year. And so if the speaker does decide to visit, and China tries to create some kind of crisis or otherwise escalate tensions, that would be entirely on Beijing. We are looking for them, in the event she decides to visit, to act responsibly and not to engage in any escalation.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
Now, the Chinese side once again is warning the American side that the PRC is on high alert. The Chinese army will by no means remain an indifferent observer and will definitely take decisive and effective countermeasures to protect sovereignty and territorial integrity. So once again, there is a warning that's coming in from the Chinese side. This is, of course, before the expected landing of Nancy Pelosi, which we're expecting somewhere around 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So less than 1 hour to go. There have been multiple bomb threats that have been reported from the Taiwan airport as well. Flexing of muscle by Beijing also continues to be seen. Our guests continue to be with us. Andrew, I really apologize for the audio issue that we're facing, but if you can hear me this time around, essentially the updates that we continue to see is one warning after another as far as China is concerned. How do you read these warnings? Just flexing of muscles, or is there a real intent of invasion or attack as far as China is concerned?
I am still muted by you.
We can hear you, Andrew. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, because I appear to be muted. Look, I think we have listened to these rather complex and perhaps sophisticated versions of what's happening. For me, it is incredibly simple. What you're observing is something that all major and minor countries do when there is a territorial dispute. Very frequently, they go into war. Very frequently, they go very near war. And most frequently, they play chicken games. Okay, India has done this with Pakistan. United States has done it with Iraq, with Iran, with Vietnam. Argentina did this with United Kingdom over the Malvinas. And of course, Russia played it for a while and then invaded Ukraine. So in this particular case, China clearly feels incredibly, particularly insulted on the potential recognition, in inverted commas, by the visit of an American important politician, and simply shows strength, shows muscle. Can they enter into military activities? Unlikely, okay, because there is too much at stake, and perhaps because they are too careful and a little bit too sophisticated when it comes into that, because after all, China, with the exception of the Korean War, has never been actively and individually involved in an active fight, unlike the United States that has been involved in scores of actual fights. I'm not passing judgment, I'm simply pointing out that all we are observing, and we're getting very excited about it, for no reason whatsoever, is countries with territorial disputes get very upset when that dispute is particularly challenged. Full stop. There's nothing else to discuss.
Roger, taking on from what Andrew is pointing out, I want to understand another aspect as far as the position of the United States is concerned. Now, isn't the United States bound by the treaty to help Taiwan if, in unfortunate scenario, there is a war that breaks out between China and Taiwan? So what I essentially want to understand is, will China actually be ready to take that kind of a risk, considering the fact that, as I pointed out earlier in the show as well, we saw a bit of a misadventure and miscalculation even by Russia in the initial weeks of the war when it invaded Ukraine?
Well, unfortunately, there is no, clear commitment that the U.S. has to fulfill towards Taiwan, because what is based upon is what is called the Taiwan Relations Act, signed in 1979. That actually is a product of the severance of the relationship between U.S. and Taiwan, and it's a reluctant, protection measure launched by the Congress rather than the U.S. government. So the U.S. has been adopting what is called a strategic ambiguity for the past few decades towards Taiwan. But now it seems that the U.S. has to be clear on a lot of things, because strategic ambiguity is applicable when the power balance between U.S. and China is favorable to the U.S. Now, as China has keep building its military muscles, U.S. has to be clear on everything. So I don't think the PLA or the CCP is trying to take over Taiwan for now, but they will be happy to have some kind of exercise, or to do more trainings for their future operations. So what you see now is actually more like a military exercise, that they are practicing all the possible ways to take Taiwan in someday for the future, where they are totally ready, when they are drawing clear to the strengths of the U.S. forces for now.
Okay, Roger and Andrew,